All right, we are live. Let me get the Instagram going real quick here and we'll get started. 1 second as I go live on Instagram. Gonna be a fun one. Heavy subject, heavy subject. I don't know. I'd rather not discuss this kind of stuff, but I feel like we have to. It's in the news right now, and it's the kind of things we need to discover. So, or we need to discuss. So, I'm calling this episode. I'm calling this. We'll put it in the prophecy and politics section on the playlist on YouTube. But this is going to be about the Epstein files. We're calling this, the Epstein files and secret societies. That's what we're going to be looking at now. I go more deeply into secret societies on my presentation on the New World Order and Bible prophecy. You can find that on my YouTube. It's a whole playlist of there's a series of lessons on that, the New World Order and Bible prophecy, and there's one in particular that I do that's called the secret behind secret societies. I think it's episode number 5. So after this, go back, check that out. That I go into more of the details. I give you the quotes from secret societies. I give you, all of the nitty gritty that we don't have time for right now here. I wanted to go through this though and talk about the Epstein files and how it relates to secret societies because it's in the news. And so I know a lot of people are curious. A lot of people are searching, doing internet searches on, what is the Epstein files? What is the secret societies? So we're going to cover that today. Now, the first question I want to answer is really, is this stuff actually real? Because whenever we talk about secret societies, we don't want to just make things up. And there's a lot of people out there who will do that for clicks. They will just, make up the most outlandish takes. And I get it, some of the stuff is fun to exaggerate and to imagine and just, oh, what if this, that, and the other? You can have fun conversations, but I'm not going to put out there anything that I don't think is actually real. I'm going to let you know, hey, this is speculation. This is actually, this is legit. This is real stuff. So, is the Epstein files, is this stuff real? Well, remember the Podesta emails. Let's start there because, yeah, let's divide. Let's divide the stuff that we know is true from the things that are, okay, let me put it this way. Let me backtrack and put it this way. In the Epstein files, it contains, part of it is tip line stuff. So anybody could, contact the FBI and put a tip in and say, hey, this is what I think, which in the one hand is good because you could have like a victim or someone who saw something and they're putting a tip out and they could investigate. On the other hand, it could be bad because people could just make things up, right? So you want to be careful with that. There's a difference between the tip line stuff, the just, anonymous tips, and those are in the Epstein files, versus like pictures of his residence, pictures of people together, pictures of him doing evil things, emails that they collected when they investigated this man. And they checked his emails, they checked the emails he was having with others, and those are in the files. Those are real. Generally speaking, those are real. The tip line stuff, that's another thing. But the emails, those are real, guys. So it's important to separate, the things like the emails versus the tip line stuff. So that's what I'll say from the beginning. Now, I'm not going to, in this episode, I'm not going to sit down and go through all of this stuff. I'm not going to go through because you can see that on the internet. That would just be my recommendation, is to separate from, okay, this is an email, this is a picture, make sure it's not AI, versus this is, a tip line. This is somebody said and they just, they speculated. And it shows up as a tip line thing kind of. So just be careful with that. So is this stuff real? The emails are legit. And the pictures are legit, and they're legit, just like the Podesta emails. If you remember back in 2016, that's really kind of when the lid popped off on all of this stuff and it went mainstream. And that was during the 2016 election. In 2015, 2016, we had WikiLeaks, and we saw behind the scenes Hillary Clinton's, right hand man in the campaign, Podesta, and his emails that got leaked. And this stuff was real, and nobody denied it because it was real. And the public got to see, really just kind of see it being admitted by them themselves for the first time, how creepy the leaders of our country are. What they actually say in their emails behind the scenes. And it was like, none of it was denied. None of it was excuse the noise if you can hear some noise in the background. It'll only last a second. Hey, living in a building, right? Your neighbors and stuff. Anyway, it's none of these emails were fake. This stuff was real. Um, People, mainstream media are even admitting that this stuff is real. Guys like Bill Maher going on his show and they're quoting these emails. Why? Because it's real. The emails are real. So when you're looking and you go online and you see some of these strange emails where it's just like somebody will send another person an email that just says pizza, and then whoever sent it, it's redacted. Why was that redacted? You know what I mean? And why would you just send an email? And some of the strange ways that these people talk about things like pizza, those emails are real, just like the Podesta files were real. If you remember, I mean, this was, a large reason why I believe Trump got elected in 2016, is we saw how just kind of slimy and corrupt and shady Hillary Clinton and Podesta and all that. And I'm not trying to make this actually political here. I'm not, uh, because contrary to what some say, the Epstein emails implicate both sides. I won't go into details on who, I think this guy is innocent, this guy isn't, because human nature, that's what we're going to do in politics, right? We're all going to say the guy I like is innocent, the guy I don't like did everything, right? I'm not here to get into those details now. We have that for another discussion. But what I will say is that, generally speaking, the powers that be on both sides, generally speaking, I'm not saying every person, but generally speaking, both sides are pretty corrupt, and there's some creepy stuff going on both sides, um, and the emails are real. Now, is this stuff real? At a minimum, we know that he did the crimes. We know that he did the crimes, and because he was in jail, he got convicted, right? I mean, even he didn't get as badly convicted as he should have. He got off on a lot of stuff, but he did the crimes. He was an evil man. He was doing some shady stuff. There's super shady things going on in those emails. And we know that he was connected to, like, everyone. We don't know exactly why he was so connected and why he was so rich. Why was it that the prime minister of Israel, the former prime minister of Israel, went and visited his house after all, like, these convictions? Like, what was it, like 25 times? Went and visited him after at least some of the convictions, right? At least some of it was exposed. Why? Why was, Prince Andrews and, why were all these people, why Bill Clinton, why were all these people so connected to him? Why was he invited to, Hillary's daughter's wedding? Or Ghislaine Maxwell was there, right? His right hand woman. We know he was deeply connected. He did some crimes. And so did Ghislaine. She's in jail right now. Ghislaine Maxwell, his, right hand woman, basically like his handler, his like pimp handler. Um, she was probably handling the girls. We know that they did the crimes and they were connected to rich people. It doesn't make any sense why he was so rich, why he was so well connected. If you look at his background, he was like a nobody at some point. He did not have the skills that you would think this guy should be super filthy rich and connected to everyone. So why was he? That leads to some obvious conclusions if you just use your brain, right? Um, he was obviously running some type of prostitution situation. Who was it for? Who were his clients? Well, he's connected to all the rich people in the world and he's super filthy rich. And no one can explain where he got all his money. Okay, put two and two together. It's pretty simple, right? We don't need to even go into like the anonymous tip line stuff in the Epstein files to come to those simple conclusions. So we know, generally speaking, it's real. He actually did the crimes. Ghislaine Maxwell did. By the way, Ghislaine Maxwell was the daughter of a guy who her dad was basically a publisher, mega publisher, who's connected to like the largest educational or one of the largest educational publishing companies. So the guy who was printing the books for your kids in school is Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. Okay. There's another reason to pull your kids out of public school and to be super like, what the hell is going on here? We don't even have time to go into all that. All right. So let's talk more. Let's go back to the Podesta stuff. Oh, and by the way, here is a screenshot of a magazine that Time Magazine, a special edition Time Magazine put out called Secret Societies. I have it. You can grab it off my bookshelf, but I have a copy of this. You can get it. It's, it's came out a few years ago, and they basically admit most of the stuff. Like they basically admit that all the powerful people were members of various secret societies. Again, I go into the more details on this on my episode, The Secrets Behind Secret Societies, in my New World Order and Bible Prophecy playlist on YouTube. Anyway, they basically admit it in this Time magazine. It's not secret societies, they exist. It's not made up. And rich and powerful people are members. The only question is, what are they actually doing behind the scenes? It's not a question of whether or not they exist and whether or not rich and powerful people are members. Yes, that's true. And it's admitted right there on like Time magazine. Yes, the Bohemian Grove exists. It's not made up. Even though it sounds like it's fairy tale stuff, it exists. The Illuminati exists. Freemasonry exists. Whatever. Skull and Bones. Those things are all real. Okay? The only question is, how evil is it? So it's not a question of whether or not it's real. Let me make this larger on my screen here. It's not actually, let's not do that because people who are watching on YouTube will see a bad version of it. If you're watching the trying to make this so that everyone can see a good version, because if you're watching on Instagram, you're going to get the vertical version of the screen. Okay, cool. We know that the Bohemian Grove is a real thing. So on your screen there on the left, you see that this is not an artist depiction. This is not AI. This picture has existed long before AI. This is real. This is a picture. This is not a drawing. This is a picture from the Bohemian Grove where rich and powerful people are dressed up like cardinals and popes, and they have a giant owl statue, and they burn a baby's, well, it's supposed to be, they say it's a doll. It's not real. But the audience is from a distance. So there's an audience watching this happen. They say it's just a play. It's just a ritual. It's not a real baby. Okay, you're so far away, you can't tell, right? So what is it? And why would you even do that? Why would you do that even if it was fake? Why would you do a ritual where you burn a doll to a giant owl, the Moloch pagan god's idol? Why would you do that while you're all dressed up like cardinals? And it's the creepiest thing ever. It's real. That actually happens. Okay, in the mountains in San Francisco, the Bohemian Grove exists. Okay, there's video of this you can find on YouTube, and it's admitted in this Time magazine that yes, it exists. There's Richard Nixon quotes talking about how it's really what's the word zesty. I'll say zesty because I don't want to get censored. It's very fruity. What goes on in the Bohemian Grove with all the men there. Richard Nixon thought it was very fruity. We'll put it that way. Um, and here is Jay-Z with the spirit cooking lady, the lady who you know, these rich, powerful people, they get together and they do spirit cooking, which is like ritual, like demonic buffets where they'll have like a human, they'll say like a model, like it's not real. I don't know, who knows if it's real or not. According to these Epstein files, it might be real, but they admit at least that they have like a model who will lie down and they eat like what looks like blood and human body parts and stuff, and they say, oh, we're just pretending. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you just pretend, right? I don't think it's pretend. But here's Jay-Z with that lady, who was, this lady is mentioned in the Podesta emails. They talk about spirit cooking and that. These people are pagans. They're high up satanic pagans. You know, we have people like Megan Fox on camera admitting that they do ritualistic drinking of each other's blood. Yeah, it's just a ritual. It's just a little bit. Why would you do that? What is going on with these people? These are the things that we know are true, that are a fact. Now, you can go into what's going beyond that, but I mean, if they're doing that, do you do you doubt that they're doing any of the other stuff? Here is a, on the bottom right on your screen there. It's from the movie Eyes Wide Shut. Creepiest movie ever. Kids, if you're watching, I do not recommend watching that movie. But I'm sure you know at least the plot line. And the idea behind that movie is it really was kind of a confession of sorts from Hollywood. And there's speculation whether or not they actually changed the movie, that it was supposed to be even more of a confession of things involving children. But at the very minimum, it's, you know, here's all these creepy, you know, rich and powerful people meeting in secret, having these rituals that are very reminiscent of like Masonic, Freemason type, you know, skull and bones type rituals. By the way, those people in Skull and Bones and Freemasonry, they admit they do a whole bunch of rituals where they also dress up like the popes and things like that. Okay. But anyway, and it's also like a sex cult thing in this movie. So there's really creepy stuff going on here. Okay, here's a very creepy case, and after this, we'll talk some more about secret societies. But this is just kind of, you can put the pieces together yourself on this one. Here's a lady. Go ahead and look her up. Nancy Smith Schaefer. She was a Georgia state senator, not a, you know, not at the federal government. She was a state level senator, the Georgia Senate. She did a heavy investigation into the corruption in child protection services. And she wrote a report called The Corrupt Business of Child Protection Services, CPS. And she was a two-time Georgia senator. She fought to expose what was going on in child protection services. She called it legal kidnapping. Legal kidnapping. You think about it. If there really is a cabal of satanic people, like Epstein type people, who are doing evil things with children, and they wanted to be able to have victims where nobody cared about these victims and nobody could do anything, wouldn't it make a lot of sense for them to use the CPS and the foster system and those kind of, because you're talking about children who maybe come from abused backgrounds, and they get taken away, and where do they go? And then maybe a lot of these kids run away and disappear, right? And that's all they could say. They could just say, "Oh, the kid ran away and disappeared, and he got into drugs," and then they can do whatever they want, right? That's a very easy alibi for criminals like that. And there's a possibility of a lot of money and a lot of evil people getting their hands on, sadly, these children. It's crazy stuff, right? And some of this is like, all right, is this speculating? Well, here is a Georgia state senator who said the system was corrupt, right? Very corrupt. And we know in America that there are a lot of missing children in this country, a lot of them. Are they ending up on places like Epstein's Island? Is the question. It's a question. It's a legitimate question. Well, here is this woman who was studying into this kind of thing. And lo and behold, she and her husband both end up dead at their house. And they say it was a murder suicide. They never found a motive. Don't know why. Why did this happen? I don't know. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Here's her gravesite, Nancy Smith Schaefer. She was like 74 years old, her and her husband. You really think a 74-year-old state senator of Georgia just up and decides, you know what? We're both going to, her and her husband just decide. Here's her gravestone: loving wife, godly mother, adored grandmother, fearless American patriot. Her and her husband just decide to off each other, kind of thing. Her husband just goes nuts, but they never found a motive. Doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And yet this woman, clearly a patriot and clearly trying, to figure something out, boom, she disappears. And this is just one example. We can go into more details. We can go into other examples of this kind of shady thing. But that should make your brain start to think a little bit, connect the dots there. So are these secret societies real? Absolutely, they're real. And are there members in, high places? Absolutely, that's not a question. Anybody who even tries to say, oh, all this secret society stuff is just fake and it's just made up, they're not serious, or they don't know what they're talking about. Here is on the top right on your screen here. I'll describe this because I'll put this as a podcast later. For those who don't see the visuals, on the top right of your screen, this is the plaque at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. You can go see it yourself. They do tours of the Statue of Liberty. And on the bottom, on the base of the Statue of Liberty, there's a plaque with the Freemason symbol, the compass and square. And it says that this, was laid by the Grand Master of Masons. It's not even, and they put their symbol right there. They don't even hide it. It's on the base of the Statue of Liberty. So the symbol of America, right there on the bottom, they say, oh, secret societies, we did this. And then here's an artist depiction, because they didn't have pictures back in George Washington Day, but this is not doubted. This is legit. When they laid the capstone of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., George Washington had his full Freemason Masonic regalia, full Masonic outfit on, with the apron there and the thing around his neck. That's the kind of stuff you wear when you're a Freemason. And again, you can read the history, that the capstone was laid Masonically and all the leaders of Freemasons were there. And this building here is not a small building, right? Very grand, very, they must have a lot of money. That's right in Washington, D.C. You can walk there from the White House. That is the Masonic Lodge in Washington, D.C. You can look up virtually any decent sized city in America and in Western Europe, and there will be either a Masonic Lodge or some type of lodge of another secret society in any decent sized city in the country. They're all over the country. They're real, and powerful people are members. That's not denied. And again, from that Time magazine, these are the names that are admitted. And there's tons more. We could talk Mark Twain. So we're talking writers, William Taft, Henry Ford, members of at least one of these secret societies. Winston Churchill, J. Edgar Hoover, Thurgood Marshall, Henry Luce. They admit that he was Skull and Bones. They admit that he was the founder of Time Magazine. They admit that in the Time Magazine. FDR. I mean, all of them. Now, the next screen I'm going to show, I'm not going to play this. You can watch the video if you go again on my YouTube, the New World Order and Bible Prophecy playlist. There's a series, and there's one on the secret behind secret societies. You can watch it there. I play it there. And it is a video of during the election in 2004, I think it was, between George W. Bush and John Kerry, Democrat versus Republican. Both of them were members of the Yale Secret Society Skull and Bones. And which, by the way, if you're interested in that, Skull and Bones, there's great books by Anthony Sutton, who was a scholar at Stanford University at I think the Hoover Institute. He wrote books on this. So look that up. Skull and Bones, Anthony Sutton. Anyway, so George W. Bush, John Kerry running against each other, Democrat versus Republican. Both were members of the same secret society, and both got asked on the news, on air during the campaign, hey, you guys were both members of these secret societies. Neither one denied it, and they just say, they kind of laughed off and says, yeah, there's a lot of secrets, we can't talk about it, and then change the subject. That's what the video basically shows. I'm not going to play it here for audio purposes, but that's what this is. Okay, I'm going to skip that. Go watch that. Go watch that on my Secret Behind Secret Societies later on after this. All right. There's nothing new under the sun. All of this stuff, all this evil, all of this paganism, this sacrificing children in rituals at the Bohemian Grove, and what's going on with Epstein, and these creepy spirit cooking and all this weird stuff. Were they cannibals? All these secret. There's nothing new under the sun. This stuff has been going on for thousands of years. So let me give you an example. Let's talk about the Knights Templar. This organization, the Knights Templar, was like one of the, at least in modern times ish, right? Because this is like 1,000 years ago almost, but one of the first kind of secret societies that popped up after kind of, anyway, they were one of the first before Freemasonry and these kind of things. And they were an order in the Catholic Church. So this is a artist depiction of the creation of the Knights Templar in 1129 at the Council of Troyes. Pope Honorius grants a papal sanction, and they were a military order known as the Knights Templar, and they were declared to be the army of God. Okay. They were a military order, the Knights Templar, and a banking. They were like the banking elite. So the military and the banking industries, is there any shadiness today in the military and banking industries? Are evil men running those industries today? Do you see a common theme here? Controlling the military, controlling the money supply and the banking. Okay. They focused on Jerusalem and the Temple of Solomon. Do any of evil men today make a big deal about the Middle East and the quote-unquote Holy Land? Don't misunderstand me. I'm a Bible Christian. But, there's a new Jerusalem in heaven that I think we should be more focused on, according to the New Testament. But, okay. But do evil men, do the world leaders today focus on the Middle East? Absolutely. That was the focus of the Knights Templar. By the way, the Freemasons, because a lot of these secret societies, they overlap, their members overlap. You're a member of one and others, and because you're a member of one, you get invited to join another, and there's different levels, and some are lower level, some are higher, some are more elite type of societies. But to show you the connection, Freemasonry has a youth group today that exists today, and it's called the Order of Demolay. Demolay is the name of the one of the highest Knights Templar guys in history. So this is an artist depiction of him, Jacques de Molay. So that shows you the connection between the Knights Templar and modern Freemasonry. Here's the history. On Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th, that's why Friday, that's where they get that from. That's why that's in horror movies. Friday the 13th. Some creepy stuff with people who make horror movies, by the way. I don't recommend watching those. I really do not recommend watching those. It's not good for your mind. There's evil people in Hollywood that want to mess you up. And if you I have in the past, don't freak out, just stop. On October Friday the 13th, 1307, King Philip IV ordered the arrest of the Knights of Templar in France, including their Grand Master Jacques de Molay. The Templars were accused of a variety of heresies. Remember, this is a time when church and state were united in Europe, and so if you did something outside of what the church wanted, you could be arrested, including heresy, devil worship, homosexuality, and financial fraud. Sounds a whole lot like the Epstein files. Under pressure from Philip, Pope Clement V eventually dissolved the Knights Templar in 1312. Remember, it was a Catholic order. And so they said, okay, it's no longer a Catholic order. But it just went underground. They were accused of various things, including worshiping this, which you see on your screen on your right, which is an artist's depiction of Baphomet, which is the goat-headed, half male, half female devil. Which, by the way, just a note on this thing being half male, half female. Does that sound like anything today? Did we hear anything about that in the Epstein files? Yes, we did. They were funding that research before any of you ever even heard of it. They were pushing for that stuff. Okay, why? Well, here is a picture of what they believe their God looks like. The devil that they worship. It's not. I'll tell you right now, devil don't actually look like that. According to the Bible, the devil is a beautiful angel. Beautiful angel. This is there's symbolism in this. The devil's a beautiful angel. If you saw him, you would think he was God or something. You do not want to look at the devil. Eventually he will appear, by the way. We're told that in the New Testament. And when it happens, don't go looking because you will be deceived. Anyway, devil likes to pretend. He likes to do these myths that he's this, have horns and tail and it looks like a goat. That's all nonsense. The devil is a gorgeous, most beautiful than you have ever seen any being in your life because he's an angel, a fallen angel, but an angel. And the angels are far more beautiful than any human you've ever seen. So don't get tricked by this. But anyway, the Knights Templar were worshiping that, and so they and their leader were burned at the stake. Okay. That's interesting history. But there's nothing new under the sun. They've been doing this kind of stuff since way back. Evil men rule the world. This is a basic principle to keep in mind. Evil men rule the world. Here and there, every once in a while, there'll be a good king. But generally speaking, evil men rule the world. Just look at Isaiah chapter 14 and Ezekiel 28. And what both of those chapters do is they make a parallel between the devil and whichever king they're talking about, whether it's the king of Babylon or the king of Tyre, some ancient king. And they make a parallel between the two. Why? Because the devil possesses and rules through evil kings. And that's how the devil runs the world, is through evil men. That's how it works. It's very simple. Satan rules the world through evil rulers. This stuff is so evil. I want to read you a Bible verse here. Jeremiah 19 and verse 5. If you have your Bible, go, you know what? I'm just going to pull it up on my phone here, just to make it simple. If you have your Bible, go ahead and grab it and open up to Jeremiah chapter 19 and verse 5. The stuff that these pagans do is so evil. God says basically, it didn't even cross my mind. I never even thought of this evil that you people are doing. So here it is, Jeremiah 19, verse 5. They have built also the high places of Baal. Baal is the sun god, by the way. That is, keep that in mind. The sun god is always the highest pagan god. They worship the sun. Keep that in mind. That's a very important principle there. The sun is often a symbol of the devil. And that's in virtually all pagan societies. You look at that and you look at they have all these different gods. Which one's the highest god? The sun god. Okay. That's Baal. Baal was the sun god in the Old Testament times in pagan society. So it says they built high places for Baal. That's like altars to Baal. And they burned their sons with fire for burnt offerings unto Baal. So their sacrifice, just like we saw at the Bohemian Grove, just like we saw. The Bible says, which I commanded not. He said, I never asked for this. Nor spake it, neither came it into my mind. God is saying, I never even, it didn't even cross my mind, the evil that these men are doing. But they've been doing this stuff for thousands of years. It's the same thing. It's nothing. What you're seeing in the Epstein files and in Hollywood is the same thing that evil men have been doing for a long time. It all goes back to the Tower of Babel. It goes back to the New World Order, which watch the New World Order and Bible Prophecy series that I did on YouTube. Watch the whole thing. It's a 9-part series. I go into all this stuff and I start at the Tower of Babel because that's where all these pagan religions go back to the Tower of Babel. And they go back to the Garden of Eden where the devil, devil tricked Adam and Eve. They get their religions from what the devil said back then. And their societies were always built on the idea of a one world government. That's what the Tower of Babel was. And these mystery pagan religions that were made up back in the days of Nimrod and his wife and all these pagan religions, they all go back to that. And it's all new agey stuff today. They call it the New Age, but it's nothing new. It's the same thing as it was back in those days with those pagan religions. And by the way, those pagan cultures, Greek and Roman and Aztec and, these kind of societies, most of this stuff that's in the Epstein files that we are shocked at because we are raised in a Christian society with, generally speaking, even if you're not a Christian, you have a baseline of Christian morality just being raised in Western civilization, which they don't have those in places like, India. And, they don't have that same kind of basic baseline of Christian morality. The stuff that we see that we are shocked at from the Epstein files, these ancient pagan cultures, they wouldn't have thought twice about it. Most of this stuff, they wouldn't even bat an eye. Do you realize how many people they sacrificed? The Aztecs did? Again, to the sun god. They would sacrifice thousands of people in a day to the sun god and not even bat an eye. Cannibalism, no problem in a lot of these pagan societies. The creepy stuff being done with children, they had no problem with that. Ancient Greek society, no problem. We're shocked. It's evil to us, and it should be evil. But just a reminder there that without God, without the Bible, without Christianity, that all of humanity goes super evil, corrupt like that. Just a reminder of that. I'm going to conclude with this. The world leaders, they worship the devil. They believe he exists. If the leaders of the most powerful men in the world believe that the devil exists and they actually worship him, maybe you should believe God exists. Maybe you should look into that. Which, by the way, if you want evidence that God exists, again, watch my series, The New World Order and Bible Prophecy. I give you proof that the Bible is real. Supernatural evidence. Watch the series. You got to get, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 episodes in by the time that you'll see proof. That you can fairly easily prove that God exists. It's not that hard. It's just whether or not you want to. Most people don't want to see it. I've told numerous people to their faces, I can prove that there's a God, and a lot of people, I don't even want to take the time. They don't care. It's not that there's not evidence. It's that men don't want to believe in God because their works are evil and they don't want to be held accountable to a God who is just trying to save them. These evil men, their beliefs are Gnostic. Run from Gnosticism, by the way. If you are at all interested in that stuff, or your church is teaching anything like that, or your movies and books are that stuff leads to Satanism, and it leads to the evil that we see in the Epstein files. Gnosticism is extremely dangerous. And that's what, again, I don't have time to go into all the beliefs of the secret societies today. I go through what they believe in my episode, The Secret Behind Secret Societies. I go into all the stuff they believe. But basically, in a nutshell, they're Gnostic, which what that is it takes the Bible and it flips it upside down. So all the good guys are bad guys. All the stories that seem like tragedies are actually good things. They make the serpent into the good guy. They make the devil into the good guy. They make God into the bad guy. They make the fall at the Garden of Eden turn into a good thing. All of this, it's Gnosticism. It flips the Bible upside down. Of course, that's what you believe if you were in a satanic cult. Yeah, it's perfectly logical. That's what they would believe. And so that's what they believe. They believe the devil's the good guy and God's the bad guy. And the reason why is, well, because the devil lets us do whatever we want. We could go do all this evil stuff, no problem. And God doesn't let us do that. Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty creepy. And you see what it leads to, the evil that these men do, because anything's justified in that. Anything is justified. If you look into, and I don't recommend reading their books, I really don't, because when you have a conversation with the devil, you get tricked, just like Eve did. She shouldn't have even talked to him. But generally speaking, just to know the basics of it, the Cliff Notes version without reading any of these creepy writings. I don't recommend reading any Gnostic writings. They teach that, that they think the devil's the good guy and God is the bad guy, and that justifies anything. They believe that you can do whatever you want, anything. So anything's justified. So all these Epstein file stuff, they think no problem. You can see what that leads to, the horrors that leads to. It's dangerous stuff. And so, again, the Epstein files and secret societies, I'll conclude it again with saying this. The world leaders absolutely believe the devil exists and they worship him. So perhaps you should believe that God exists and run from that satanic stuff. All right, that's all we got time for today. Again, go and check out The Secret Behind Secret Societies on my New World Order and Bible Prophecy playlist on YouTube. Watch that whole series. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like this. If you were blessed by this, you learned something new, I really appreciate if you follow. This is on X, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Rumble. I'm live all of those places, and I will be posting this as a podcast as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well under my podcast, Prophecy and Politics. All right. Thank you guys. God bless. Again, Joshua Fontanilla here. Just look up my name on any of those places, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care and God bless.